In the gilded splendor of Versailles, where every breath was perfumed with political intrigue and every gesture carried the weight of dynasties, one Austrian princess danced her way into history as the most hated woman in France, a queen whose very existence became synonymous with the excess, arrogance, and ultimate collapse of the Ancien Regime. Marie Antoinette, born Maria Antonia Josepha Johanna von Habsburg-Lothringen, transformed from a carefree teenager into a scapegoat for an entire nation's rage, her journey from beloved Dauphine to Madame Deficit, revealing how personal choices, political miscalculations, and the crushing weight of historical forces could converge to create a perfect storm that would drown monarchy itself in rivers of blood. Born on November 2, 1755, in the Imperial Palace of Vienna, Maria Antonia entered a world where Habsburg power stretched across Central Europe like a spider's web, connecting Austria to Spain, Italy, and the German states through an intricate network of dynastic marriages and political alliances. Her mother, Empress Maria Theresa, ruled with an iron fist wrapped in maternal devotion, while her father, Francis III, provided the gentler influence that would shape his daughter's artistic sensibilities and unfortunate tendency toward frivolity over statecraft. The youngest daughter of 16 children, Maria Antonia might have lived in relative obscurity were it not for the diplomatic revolution that transformed France from Austria's ancient enemy into its most crucial ally. The 7 Years' War had devastated European power balances, and Maria Theresa understood that only a marriage alliance with France could secure Habsburg interests against the growing threat of Prussian militarism and British commercial expansion. When French ambassadors arrived in Vienna to negotiate the marriage contract that would bind Maria Antonia to the future Louis XVI, they found a charming but woefully unprepared teenager whose education had focused more on music, dancing, and court etiquette than on the political realities she would soon face as Dauphine of France. Her tutors had filled her head with romantic notions about French culture and gallantry, but no one had warned her about the xenophobic hatred that French nobles harbored toward Austrian influence. The ceremony that transformed Austrian Archduchess into French Dauphine took place on a small island in the Rhine River, where Maria Antonia was symbolically stripped of everything Austrian, her clothes, her jewels, even her beloved pet dog, and redressed as Marie Antoinette, Dauphine of France. This theatrical ritual, designed to demonstrate her complete transformation from Habsburg princess to Bourbon bride, instead became a prophetic symbol of the identity crisis that would plague her entire reign. Her arrival at Versailles on May 16, 1770, created a sensation that masked the political calculations underlying her presence. The 14-year-old girl who charmed courtiers with her fresh beauty and spontaneous laughter seemed to embody everything that the aging, corrupt court of Louis XV needed to restore its popular appeal. Yet beneath the surface celebrations lay undercurrents of resentment from those who viewed her marriage as proof that France had become a mere satellite of Austrian policy. The wedding ceremony itself was a masterpiece of royal propaganda designed to demonstrate the wealth, power, and cultural sophistication of the Bourbon monarchy, while celebrating the diplomatic triumph that had transformed centuries of Franco-Austrian enmity into alliance. Yet the very magnificence of these celebrations, conducted while ordinary French subjects struggled with taxation and economic hardship, established the pattern of excess that would eventually fuel revolutionary hatred. Her marriage to the future Louis XVI began as a political arrangement, but quickly revealed personal dimensions that would shape both their characters and the fate of their kingdom. Louis, awkward and intellectually curious, but painfully shy in social situations, found in Marie Antoinette a companion whose vivacity compensated for his own social inadequacies, while her political naivety matched his own reluctance to engage with the complexities of governance. The 7-year delay in consummating their marriage became one of Versailles' worst-kept secrets, providing endless ammunition for satirists and political enemies who portrayed the royal couple as either impotent or unnatural. This intimate failure, whether due to physical problems, psychological barriers, or simple inexperience, undermined Marie Antoinette's primary function as Dauphine, producing heirs to secure the dynasty, while creating a void in her life that she filled with increasingly expensive and politically dangerous distractions. Her patronage of fashion, gambling, and elaborate entertainments began as harmless diversions but gradually evolved into political liabilities as economic pressures mounted and public opinion turned increasingly hostile toward royal extravagance. The queen who spent fortunes on gowns while peasants starved became a powerful symbol of aristocratic indifference to popular suffering, though her actual expenditures were often exaggerated by enemies who found her a convenient target for broader social frustrations. The construction of the Petit Trianon as her private retreat demonstrated both her artistic taste and her fatal disconnection from political reality, as she created an elaborate fantasy world where she could play at being a simple shepherdess while remaining oblivious to the genuine hardships of rural life. This rustic playground, with its carefully manicured gardens and artificial village, became a lightning rod for critics who saw in it the ultimate expression of aristocratic hypocrisy and waste. The diamond necklace affair of 1784 to 1786 dealt a devastating blow to Marie Antoinette's reputation from which she would never recover, despite her complete innocence of any wrongdoing. Cardinal de Rohan's gullibility and Jeanne de Lamotte's criminal cunning created a scandal that seemed to confirm every negative stereotype about the Queen's greed, vanity, and political corruption, while the sensational trial provided a public forum for airing grievances against royal authority. The pamphlets and satirical prints that proliferated during and after the diamond necklace affair created an alternate reality where Marie Antoinette became a monster of sexual depravity and political treason, accused of conducting lesbian affairs with the Duchess of Polignac while simultaneously betraying French military secrets to her Austrian relatives. These libelous attacks, however false, shaped public perception more powerfully than any official propaganda could counter them. Her role as mother, beginning with the birth of Princess Marie-Thérèse in 1778, provided temporary redemption for her public image, but also created new vulnerabilities as her maternal instincts conflicted with political necessities. The loss of her first son, Louis-Joseph, to tuberculosis in 1789 devastated her personally while occurring at precisely the moment when royal authority faced its greatest crisis, creating a parallel between personal and political tragedy that seemed to many observers to reflect divine judgment. The financial crisis that precipitated the calling of the Estates General in 1789 had roots in decades of military expenditure and fiscal mismanagement, but Marie Antoinette's reputation for extravagance made her the perfect scapegoat for problems that far exceeded any individual's capacity to create or solve. The phrase, "let them eat cake," almost certainly apocryphal but perfectly capturing popular perceptions of royal callousness, became permanently attached to her memory despite lacking any credible historical foundation. Her influence over Louis XVI's political decisions, often exaggerated by both supporters and enemies, reflected the king's genuine affection for his wife and his recognition of her intelligence, but it also violated traditional expectations about queenly behavior and provided ammunition for those who portrayed the monarchy as corrupted by foreign influence. Her correspondence with her brother, Emperor Joseph II, though largely ceremonial, was interpreted as evidence of treasonous collaboration with Austria. The march of Parisian women to Versailles on October 5, 1789, forced the royal family's removal to the Tuileries Palace and marked the end of Marie Antoinette's life as a sheltered queen, thrusting her into direct confrontation with revolutionary forces that viewed her as the embodiment of everything they sought to destroy. Her dignified behavior during this terrifying ordeal impressed even some enemies, but it came too late to restore her damaged reputation. Her secret negotiations with foreign powers, including her correspondence with Count Fersen and her attempts to coordinate with Austrian and Prussian courts, represented desperate efforts to save her family and restore royal authority, but they also provided genuine evidence of the treasonous activities that her enemies had long suspected. These communications, when discovered, transformed speculation about her disloyalty into documented proof of collaboration with France's enemies. The failed flight to Varennes in June 1791 destroyed whatever remained of the royal family's credibility with the French people, transforming Louis XVII from a well-meaning but incompetent king into a traitor who had attempted to flee his kingdom and return with foreign armies. Marie Antoinette's role in planning this escape attempt confirmed her image as the evil genius behind royal policy, though her actual influence was probably less than her enemies claimed. Her imprisonment in the Temple Tower beginning in August 1792 stripped away the luxury and ceremony that had defined her existence for over 20 years, revealing a woman whose courage and dignity under extreme duress commanded respect even from some of her captors. The contrast between the frivolous queen of popular imagination and the steadfast mother and wife who faced imprisonment and death with remarkable composure suggested depths of character that few had previously suspected. The trial and execution of Louis XVIII in January 1793 left Marie Antoinette widowed, effectively orphaned her surviving children, and removed the last barrier between her and the revolutionary justice that had been stalking her for years. Her grief at her husband's death was genuine and profound, but it also steeled her resolve to protect her children and maintain royal dignity regardless of personal cost. Her transfer to the Conciergerie prison in August 1793 marked the final phase of her transformation from Austrian archduchess to revolutionary martyr, as the woman who had once commanded armies of servants found herself confined in a damp cell with only a single attendant. Yet even in these degrading circumstances, she maintained the composure and grace that had characterized her better moments as queen. The revolutionary tribunal that tried her in October 1793 was less interested in establishing her guilt than in providing theatrical justification for a predetermined death sentence, as her execution had become politically necessary to demonstrate that no one, regardless of birth or former status, stood above revolutionary law. The charges of corresponding with foreign enemies and corrupting her late husband were largely accurate, though they reflected desperate attempts at survival rather than long-term treasonous plotting. Her final letter to Madame Elizabeth, written on the morning of her execution, revealed a woman who had found in extremity the religious faith and philosophical acceptance that had eluded her during her years of prosperity. Her forgiveness of her enemies and her hopes for France's future demonstrated a spiritual transformation that suggested how differently her reign might have unfolded under less turbulent circumstances. The execution on October 16, 1793, was witnessed by thousands of Parisians whose cheers and jeers provided a grim soundtrack to the end of the Ancien Regime's most visible symbol. Yet contemporary accounts also noted the dignity with which she faced death, walking to the scaffold with steady step and maintaining royal composure even as the blade fell on both her neck and the monarchical tradition she had represented. The immediate aftermath of her death saw her transformed from hated enemy into tragic heroine, as even some revolutionaries began to question whether the bloodthirsty pursuit of royal enemies had gone too far. Her execution marked a turning point in revolutionary psychology, as the systematic elimination of the old order's representatives began to seem less like justice and more like vengeance. The black legend that had accumulated around her name during the revolutionary period gradually gave way to more nuanced historical assessments that recognized her as a woman trapped by circumstances largely beyond her control, whose personal failings, however real, were insufficient to explain or justify the hatred that ultimately consumed her. The Marie Antoinette of popular imagination, frivolous, selfish, and treacherous, bore little resemblance to the complex individual revealed by careful historical analysis. Her influence on fashion, decorative arts, and cultural style extended far beyond her political impact, as the Marie Antoinette style became synonymous with a particular form of refined elegance that combined French sophistication with Austrian Gemütlichkeit. Her patronage of artists like Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun helped establish new standards of portraiture that emphasized emotional expression over formal protocol. The myth of "let them eat cake" became permanently attached to her memory, despite lacking any credible historical foundation, suggesting how powerful symbolic narratives could overshadow factual evidence in shaping historical memory. This fictional quote perfectly captured popular perceptions of aristocratic callousness, making it more historically significant than many documented statements that failed to achieve such resonance. Modern scholarship has gradually rehabilitated her reputation by placing her actions within proper historical context, recognizing that her supposed extravagance was often exaggerated, while her genuine attempts to adapt to revolutionary change were largely ignored by contemporaries who had already decided her fate. She emerges from recent studies as a more complex figure whose faults were human scale rather than monstrous. Her letters and personal papers, long suppressed or ignored, reveal a woman capable of genuine affection, maternal devotion, and personal growth under pressure, suggesting that different circumstances might have allowed her better qualities to flourish while containing her weaknesses within manageable bounds. Her correspondence with Count Fersen, in particular, shows emotional depths that contradict stereotypes about aristocratic superficiality. The children she left behind, Marie-Thérèse, who survived to tell her story, and Louis-Charles, who died in revolutionary captivity, became living symbols of the human costs of political extremism, their suffering serving as powerful arguments against the unlimited pursuit of ideological purity, regardless of individual innocence or guilt. Her relationship with Louis XVI, initially arranged for political purposes, evolved into genuine partnership based on mutual affection and shared adversity, suggesting that arranged marriages could develop authentic emotional foundations when both parties possessed goodwill and compatible temperaments. Their shared courage during their final ordeals reflected bonds forged through common suffering. The Petit Trianon, her most controversial creation, has been recognized by modern observers as an important example of landscape architecture and interior design that influenced European taste for generations. What seemed frivolous to revolutionary critics now appears as genuine artistic patronage that enriched French cultural heritage in ways that outlasted political upheavals. Her impact on European monarchy extended beyond her personal fate, as her execution shocked royal courts throughout the continent and contributed to the coalition warfare that would dominate European politics for the next quarter-century. Her death became a rallying cry for counter-revolutionary forces that viewed her martyrdom as justification for unlimited warfare against French republicanism. Today, Marie Antoinette remains one of history's most fascinating figures, precisely because she embodied the contradictions of her era. A woman of genuine personal charm trapped within political structures that made her the focus of hatred she neither deserved nor understood. Her story illustrates how individual personality, historical circumstance, and political necessity can interact to create tragedy on both personal and national scales. Her legacy reminds us that historical judgment must account for the constraints within which historical figures operated, recognizing that what appears obvious in retrospect was often impossible to see clearly by those living through events. Marie Antoinette's failures were real, but they were also human, and her ultimate fate reflected the revolutionary period's tragic inability to distinguish between symbolic necessity and individual justice. In the end, Marie Antoinette never said, "Let them eat cake," but she became the eternal symbol of aristocratic indifference to popular suffering, proving that historical memory often cares less about factual accuracy than about symbolic power. Her transformation from Austrian archduchess to revolutionary scapegoat demonstrates how personal identity can be overwhelmed by political forces, leaving behind legends that obscure the complex humanity of those who lived through history's most turbulent moments.